welcome to Octopunk Weekly Update, post-Detroit Evolution Edition. We got a lot of people in the chat. Oh, I think I saw Ninja Noodle's subscription fly past! 11 months. We have been affiliates for almost a year now. And so, yeah. We're coming up on 1 year. Oh, and Kiney as well for 10 months. Thanks, guys. Hello, everybody. As you can see, we have a little bit of a new aesthetic. I have not set up my lights yet, so we're going with the basic overhead crappy lights in the window. But we are in my new studio, which has a lot of cool stuff in the background. We have this lovely octopus painting by my friend Amanda Dinges, posters for live stream the Detroit Evolution, lots of fan mail that you have sent me over the past year to the P.O. Box, as well as some other fun stuff back there. That is a Shadow of the Colossus painting by my friend Chuck Cart. Amazing artist, look him up. I absolutely adore that. As well as a Samurai Cthulhu by Dungeon Wears, also an awesome artist. And this by John Harrelson, a Cthulhu, Teenage Cthulhu. I think this is called What's for Breakfast. So we've got a lot of cool stuff back there. Oh, and Proton Factories. I'm going to shout out Proton Factories for his Nintendo art up there. These are all Southeastern artists who are really, really awesome. Thank you, Hello Sweetie, for subscribing at Tier 1. Yes, congratulations to our friend Maximilian Koger as well. He just made affiliate on Twitch this past week, so you can check out his channel as well. We'll be talking a little bit more about that later. And then Chris Trindade, our Gavin Reed, has started his Twitch journey. He's on the way to affiliate within the next month. He streams twice a week too. I guess you'll be hearing that from me, maybe for the first time, some of the things that he's doing. So yeah. For those who are new, Octopunk Weekly Update is a stream that we do every Tuesday here at this time slot, which talks about what's coming to Patreon, what's coming to YouTube, what's coming to Twitch every week, as well as new behind-the-scenes stuff, news about our projects, anything like that. For the past 8 months, it has really been what's new with Detroit Evolution, because that has been the project that we have been working on, and now it's kind of like Detroit Evolution is over. Well, what the hell do we do now? We have a lot of stuff coming up with DE that is behind the scenes stuff that I have not been able to share yet because it is, spoilery. And we also have a lot of content with the cast coming up on Twitch in the coming months. A lot of fun things to do with the movie, a lot of fun Q&As and that sort of thing, like the Q&A we want to do today. So now that you have seen the movie and can engage with it, and can analyze it and can make art about it and can think about it and can get a peek behind the scenes of certain things that we couldn't show you before, we have months and months and months coming of a different way to engage with Detroit Evolution than building it up as we have before. What the hell do we do now that my countdown is over, says Kim? Well, now you're a mod. That's what you do now. And thank you. Let me give a shout out to our new mods. Sylvia, Sarah, Ricky, and Kim. Ricky isn't on Twitch. He's only in the Discord, but thank you to them anyway. As you can see, we've got some stream elements set up now with different schedules that are coming up, so keep an eye on that, but I'll be reiterating that as well. Another countdown for a sequel. Well, I'm sure you guys will be asking me about that later, and I do have opinions on all of that. But let's see if we've got anything to talk about. So, as you know, I did a poster giveaway thing on Instagram and Twitter. I have not picked the winners yet. I plan on doing that later today or tomorrow. So this is still going to be a thing for sure. Thank you to everybody who entered in that. This is actually the lovely signed poster that one Instagrammer and one Twitter user will be receiving in the mail. Only 10 are in existence, and 6 of them are already claimed, and 1 of them is on my wall. So I only have 3 to actually give away, and I'm giving away 2 of them for this contest. And the last one, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. We'll see. Additionally, I don't have a card for this week on Patreon because I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do on Patreon this week. I think I'm probably going to be publishing a second gag reel on Patreon on Friday. That's most likely. But if you want to go ahead and jump on this postcard, this is signed by Artina Chen, Carla Kim. For the $10 level or up, you will receive a signed Carla Kim postcard in the mail. This is something we do every month on Patreon. We get an autographed postcard from one of the actors and we send it out. And if you've been with our Patreon for, the year that we've already been doing it, you already have a vast collection of cards that the actors and crew have signed. So this continues that trend with some of our new actors coming up, like Carla Kim, Chris Trindade, Jillian Gertz. So stay tuned for more information on that. Speaking of Twitch again, I want to talk a little bit about our upcoming content schedule in specificity. As you know, today we're doing a Q&A with me, director Michelle Iannantuono, about Detroit Evolution. But this Saturday, if you've got questions for the cast, the main cast, Maximilian, Chris, Carla, Jill, and Michael, we will be doing a stream at noon Eastern on Saturday. And so that'll be specifically for the cast about their roles and stuff. But we've got more. Coming later in the coming weeks, 2 weeks from now, Saturday on May 2nd, we're going to do the Detroit Evolution hilarious live commentary with cast and possibly crew. I might be bringing in Brett for that one as well, our cinematographer, because he's hysterical. This is basically Mystery Science Theater 3000 for those who don't know, or Riff Tracks as they go by more modernly. We will stream the movie on Twitch. You will be able to see our faces on webcam, and you will be able to hear our voices relentlessly commentating meme humor over the entire film. It's sure to be a lot of fun. We had a fun time doing the table read of the film before we shot it. We got around, we read the script together, and that was a riot. So I know that these guys can deliver some great humor self-referentially about the film. And then finally, on Saturday, May the 9th, we're having the Detroit Evolution Google Translate script performance. Yes, the return of what we called Detroit Wakey, which was the Google Translate disaster performance of Detroit Awakening. This is the disaster performance of our 75-page script of Detroit Evolution. And I think most of the cast will be reprising. Excuse me. This is what I get for eating granola bars before going live. Most of the script will be reprising their roles from the film. So, and as always, I am the narrator reading the stage directions, such as Chris picks Nines up and puts him on his shoulder, which is one of them. And you can follow us here on Twitch at Octopunk Media to make sure you get alerted when those go live. We will continue to be doing Saturday streams about Detroit Evolution beyond this. I have a VFX stream in mind, I have a cinematography stream, so, you know, this is just for the next month, but we are trying to get to Twitch partner. So we're going to be doing 4 streams a week, starting on April... Like this week, we're kind of keeping it normal, and then next week, we're doing no streams at all. Nothing. I'm taking the week off. But starting April 27th, Monday, we're going to a 4-stream-a-week format, 2 game streams, 1 OpWoo, and then 1 Detroit Evolution film-themed stream every week. So that will be our schedule in the imminent future. So we're trying to get to Twitch partner, and hopefully that schedule will allow us to do that. You need to sleep, take the week off, you need to rest. Yes, that's what I'm doing next week, I promise. Have I gotten to sleep yet? I haven't gotten more than 5 hours yet, but I have slept a little, which is more than I can say when I was finishing DE, where I was awake for 3 days. Thank you, Stream Elements, for plugging our coffee in, and thank you to everybody who has donated coffee. I have noticed a few people have done that, very generously so, in some cases, and that's absolutely amazing. I really appreciate that. So if that is something you have done, shout out. Also want to reiterate that Chris and Maximilian are now streaming as well. Every Sunday they do a co-op stream together. They're going to continue doing that for as long as they want to. They play Resident Evil 6 right now, but they've been taking suggestions for co-op games that they could play instead. I think Portal 2 was on that list. A Way Out is on that list. Man of Medan is on that list. So I'm really excited to see what they do together. They have a really great dynamic and are very fun. You would subscribe to both Trindabaga, which is Chris's stream, and Maximilian Koger, which is Maximilian's stream, and you can watch them in split screen, or you can hear their voices on each other's streams when they do those co-streams. But Maximilian also does Detroit Become Human streams on Fridays at noon, and Chris is going to start doing Uncharted 4 on Thursdays at noon. So he told me this last night, that he's going to do Thursdays as well. So if you want to check out him playing Uncharted this week, unless his mind changes, which is his prerogative before between now and then, you can check him out at noon. And be sure to subscribe to Maximilian so you can get some of his beautiful emotes that are probably going to be designed by Kaini. Anything to do with Chris is going to be chaotic. Yeah, I have heard that their stream chats are hysterical because Maximilian's is like the Zen garden and Chris's is completely chaotic, which is a very fun dynamic, I think, when they're co-streaming, to have all of the chaotic people go to one and all of the chill people go to the other. That's very fun. And special shout out to Ninja Doodles and Kaini for being their mods. That is a big responsibility, and you guys are killing it. Doing the graphic design stuff, doing the Twitch programming, doing the community moderation. Just awesome. Everything that's happening in 2020 is our payment for y'all's existence. Oh, I don't think so, because my existence has been very, very hard too these past 8 months. And that will bring me into, I'm gonna kick off my Q&A with a question that has been asked a lot. Not as much as it was asked with Detroit Awakening. I mean, with Detroit Awakening, it was like every freaking comment was like, part 2, part 2, part 2, I need a sequel. With this, it's more seldom. With this, it's more like people are pretty satisfied when the movie ends. They're not necessarily insisting on having more. I mean, we gave them 75 minutes. It's a pretty satisfying amount of content. And, you know, obviously we didn't leave anything on the table as far as Read 900's relationship was concerned. I mean, we definitely went all in on the romance element. But I do think that there have been a lot of people who have asked about, funny enough, people have asked for a part 2, and I'm just like, well, technically it's a part 3, but you know what? I'll allow it. But yeah, people have been asking for a sequel or a spinoff or that sort of thing. And basically what I have to say about that is that this was a big commitment. This was, if we're just talking like doing another feature, I don't really foresee that happening, because this was 8 solid months of just nonstop work. And 8 months is a long time. I mean, it's almost a year. And when we take into the consideration of the fundraising we had to do for Evolution as well, you know, really, I threw a year of my life at making Detroit Evolution. And that's lightning fast for a feature. Most filmmakers I know who make features spend 2.5 years on them, from the time they start writing the script to the time they premiere them at festivals and stuff. So, you know, doing a feature in a year, from fundraising to completion is insane, especially when you single-handedly do all post-production. And it basically required me to not do anything else for the entirety of that time. Like, since August, I have had some client work and some other, you know, income sources. But for the most part, there were months where every dime I was making on Patreon, on Ko-fi, on Twitch, on merch sales was dedicated and earmarked to become the budget of Detroit Evolution. Like, all that money got spent on the movie. It didn't go to me. It didn't pay my bills or anything. Now, once we wrapped the film, Patreon did switch to being more like, okay, this is actually supporting me. This is actually like allowing me to continue doing this without having to stress so much about client work. I don't have to worry about, you know, making client work and stuff as much when I can, you know, stream 4 times a week and all that. So I'm in a decent place now, but I don't know if I could necessarily like be in a position where I'm making enough with Patreon and merch sales and stuff to where I can take half that budget and put it into another huge feature project and then still have enough to support myself. Because there's only so much I can do, or so far I can go, and so long I can go with basically not making money. So, yeah, Pillowcat says, help pay Michelle's bills. I mean, like, you know, that's kind of the thing, is that if I was making, you know, if I was making $5,000 a month on Patreon or something, then hell yeah, I could take, you know, half of that for my bills and then the other half, and you know, put it to a huge project. And I'm not saying that's impossible, that would ever happen. I mean, the fact that we're where we are now is crazy to me. I couldn't have imagined it a while ago. But I do think that it's a consideration, because I'd say that I put about $75,000 worth of free labor into the project, like over 1,500 hours of time, and that's a lot to devote to something more than once. I mean, it was kind of a once in a lifetime thing, I think. Now, that being said, oh, thanks, Kits. All the hearts. Ariel asks, what about a series of short episodes? But here's the thing, a series is even harder. A series is even harder than a feature. Because a series, I mean, if you're looking at 70 hours of content, you know, whether it's episodes or 70 minutes of content, whether it's episodes or a movie, I mean, it's like the same production, you know, workload. Now, will I never ever touch this universe again or do anything with it? That's not necessarily off the table. I have a couple concepts for standalone short things, you know, things that we could shoot in a day or two, things that would only take maybe a month or two in post to do, things that would only maybe take, you know, a few $1,000s, maybe $3,000 to $4,000 to make, and not $17,000. That's not off the table. That we could potentially do something. A couple of these ideas are Read 900 ideas. I would love to do something with Valerie and Tina, you know, Valerina, as we call it. We also have a Christmas special that has been talked about. Not just a scripted Hallmarkian Christmas special, but also, as my friend Michael Whaley suggested, a Star Wars Christmas special, where it's literally just ultra meta script comedy, essentially, where they play parodies of their characters. That could also be kind of hysterical. So, you know, we have options. A photo shoot, I have considered that before, actually. I have considered bringing Maximilian and Chris together again to maybe do a photo series of, like, Read 900 AUs or something like that. I think that could also be, like, interesting, even though they're not, like, cosplayers, really, and that would require a lot of, like, cosplay knowledge. I think it's not off the table, and that could be done relatively affordably. So there's definitely things, again, I think that, you know, Chris and Maximilian might not be done donning the mantles of Gavin and Nines forever. But we're definitely going to take a break from it for now, especially because I just have so much on deck in the future. And as far as serialized content goes, I do have a series in a different fandom, Fallout 4, that I would like to work on. It is all animated, so you wouldn't have to, you know, shoot anything. But I have Chris in mind for a character. I have Maximilian in mind for a character. I have Michael in mind for a character. So I'm sure there will be many more collaborations in the future. Serialized content is coming. More fandom, fan fiction-y content is coming. More Detroit content might be coming. But we also have a lot of original stuff coming as well. So yeah, that's basically where I stand with that. Well, Carla can work with me in the future as well. Oh, I love Carla. I would love to work with her again. That's half the reason I want to make Valerina, is so that I can give her a star vehicle along with Tiari Solis, who I also love. Would it be possible to sell DVDs with all the content from Patreon and stuff? I would love to have a physical version. No, it's not possible to sell physical copies of the film. It's a fan film. We can't profit off of it. What we could maybe do is give away, if we did like a Kickstarter to fundraise another project, DVDs and Blu-rays of the previous films could potentially be given away as perks. Like, maybe we would do that. But even just the nature of doing a Kickstarter for something in the DBH universe is a little sketchy, because we were able to raise the money for DE through like 6 different channels of fundraising and under the mantle of just Octopunk, just supporting Octopunk. If we actually tried to do a Kickstarter specifically for a fan film, it gets a little tricky from a legality standpoint. And I don't know if Quantic Dream would be okay with that. Like, I don't know if they would be like, ooh, like, you guys are raising a lot of money, like, in one place for this project and stuff. Like, where's that money going? I don't know if that would I mean, I know fan films have been like done on Kickstarter before, and some of them have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we wouldn't need that much. But I think that gets a little more sketchy. But never say never, I guess. We do have Blu-ray copies going to producers as producer perks. Again, people who donated a lot of money to Detroit Evolution getting made over Patreon and various platforms. They'll be getting Blu-rays, but it's a limited run of like a dozen. So they're basically, I have not figured out yet how to get physical media in the hands of the fans while also towing the line of not breaking the law completely. So I don't want to do that. I think it is kind of sketchy. I do think that it's like I do think it walks that line a little bit too much. And I actually I have friends who make fan films who will just go to conventions and straight up sell $20 Blu-rays like of their fan film. And if they want to do that and take that risk, that's on them. I think that's really risky. And I don't want to get sued. I'm really trying to avoid that. That would be really bad. So, as long as we walk the line of just being like, hey, we're making this thing. It's going on YouTube. It's free. Like, we're not, trying to sell it. We're not trying to make it into a product that you can sell. We're not trying to infringe upon the IP. Yes, I mean, of course, we have a Patreon and stuff where if people want to support us as a company making, all the things that we make, and continuing to stream and stuff, like, that's different. But it becomes a legal gray area when you're like, oh no, like, I'm gonna make this product in somebody else's IP and you gotta pay $20 for it. Like, that, putting a paywall between the actual movie and people is when it gets tricky. All right, so let me scroll back up. Was there a particular scene in DE that was hard to film because it was too funny or too emotional? Too funny. The Lotso scene was pretty funny. However, to the testament of JJ, Chris, and Maximilian, they were all extremely professional, and they all delivered on every take and managed to get through their lines flawlessly. So I would say that if anything was too funny to get through, it would have been that, but they did great. As far as too emotional, Maximilian struggled to not cry in the coma scene. And I kind of had to cut around that a little bit, because he was just wrecked. Like, he was supposed to lay still and be in a coma, but as soon as Chris started talking to him, he could not help himself. He was just crying. It happened in the table read. It happened when we were watching the movie together during the premiere. He was crying during that scene. He unmuted himself just to say "fuck you, Chris," and then and then muted himself again. That was probably the hardest one for him to get through. And you can ask him more about that on Saturday in the cast and crew stream. I'm sure they all have different answers for that question. Chris, amazingly, as emotional as he made us, and as emotional as he portrays, Gavin basically crying multiple times in the film. I don't think there was ever anything he had difficulty getting through. He was very much a person who could be joking and goofing off and saying, oh yeah, right up to the moment I yelled action, and then all of a sudden he's this traumatized, broken, crying person. It was actually really, really a testament of skill that he could just switch his brain completely on a dime from his actual personality to this character. Maximilian's much more of a type of person who needs things to be settled. He needs things to be in the right headspace. He needs to kind of ease himself back into character. He doesn't have the brain that just switches on and off like that. So that's kind of an example of, their different approaches to the film. What was the hardest location to find? Probably the Zen Garden. It was also our most expensive location because of how difficult it was to get that right. I feel like with some of the others, like the hospital location was a little difficult and expensive, but I had options for it. Like, I had cheaper options. I could have built a set. Like, there was a few different things I could have done there. But that garden, man, you had to find a place that did not have street noise, that did not have chatter from other people in the background, that did not have power lines, that didn't have street lamps or trash cans, or, you know, I was in Hampton Park, which is a big park downtown Charleston. And that was a place I could have gotten for like $100, and I almost went with it when we didn't have, you know, the budget. And thank you to Knick Knack Deviant, because without her becoming an executive producer really, you know, soon around the time I was choosing the garden, we would not have been able to afford Magnolia Plantation and Gardens, which is where we actually went for the Zen Garden. Because I was about to go with Hampton Park and be like, there's power lines, there's trash cans, there's people in the background. I am going to have to shoot around this and CGI the fuck out of this, you know, out of this location in post in order to make it convincingly, you know, a garden in a mind palace where nobody else is. But we were able to get that location because of her. I don't know if she's in the chat today. Sometimes she shows up. But thank you, Nicole, because holy shit. Like, like that place was perfect, was really perfect. And they only gave us like a little sliver of it. That's why you see the Red Bridge in the movie, but you never actually see it in any of the scenes, is because Brett went out and shot B-roll, and he got shots of like the location, that like the places we were not allowed to actually be at and do scenes at. He still went around and like got some footage of it anyway. Because they gave us like a little corner path, and they were like, all right, for $1,500 and 9 hours from open to close, you can be in this little corner of, you know, of the garden. But we tried to make it feel bigger than it actually was by shooting in different, you know, pieces of it throughout. Hey, Knick Knack Paddywhack, there she is. Yes, thank you, Nicole. I'm glad to see you in the chat. Will I make a spoilery Spotify playlist for DE? Yes, I have already done that, actually. Somebody can probably throw the link in the chat to my DE preview playlist. I haven't updated it since the movie came out, but there are definitely things on there that are spoilery. And what's funny is that some of you guessed things that happened in the movie because of some of the songs, particularly When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish. Very much about, like, the fact that... you know, Gavin has the breakdown after being vulnerable, and then they go to the party for Chris, and they have an argument, and then Nines gets attacked. Like, that whole sequence is When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish. Thank you, Neb, for throwing that in the chat. Well, thank God I didn't listen to it. Well, I mean, yeah, but it's good now. There's a lot of good stuff on there, including Linkin Park from Meteora. How did I choose the clothes for each character, says Jan Janine. So that was one of the more fun parts of the film. There was, I can kind of take it character by character, I think, pretty much with the case of Nines. Let me turn up my volume here because I'm farther away from the mic than I normally am. This is going to bother me later, I'm sure. So in the case of Nines, I knew that I wanted to go with the same aesthetic of him wearing like a black shirt and a white jacket, but we got rid of the RK900 jacket in Detroit Awakening. That was the big plot point in that film, about how he was letting go of his past, you know, image with Cyberlife. He was letting go of this thing that Cyberlife, you know, chained him in, so to speak. And but I think he would keep that same aesthetic, and I think that from a marketing standpoint, like, you want to be able to recognize that character in pictures. He needs to be like, you see him and you're like, that's RK900. And so a lot of fan art, you know, from Luscious White Flame and Don LaMetho and many others have put Nines in like a white motorcycle jacket or like a long white trench coat, especially when it's like a human AU and he's Detective Niles instead. So I was like, okay, this suits his character. I'm gonna go with that. If I did another movie, I would probably have him branch out a little and maybe do like the black turtleneck with the long like tan trench coat. I've seen that be a Niles outfit a few times before in fan art, and I think that would be cool to shake it up and not have him in white. Somebody pointed out in the live chat during the film, like when they're in front of the car about to go into the warehouse, they're like, man, Nines just had to find a white jacket before they could go on this mission. Which is really, really funny. I mean, I presume that all of the detectives have lockers at the DPD where they keep a spare set of clothes, so that's where that came from. So yeah, that was Nines. Gavin, I wanted to keep him in the V-necks, the plain V-necks, but I varied the colors a little bit. I had him go from green, black, and gray. Zingarden Gavin wears white. There's been a lot of discussion about this. Now, I think Zingarden Gavin wears white for pretty obvious reasons, because real life Gavin never wears that color. It visually distinguishes him from his real life counterpart, and kind of provides an essence of, I am unburdened by my, I am the idealized version of myself. And in that case, I want to make it clear that Nines is not trying to erase Gavin's flaws and his drama and that sort of thing in the version that he's built of the Zingarden. He's not trying to change Gavin in his mind. It's more like he only sees Gavin as a good person. He only sees him without his flaws. He only sees the good. And I think when you love somebody, you just think they're perfect. You don't see the things that are wrong with them. You don't see the things that they hate about themselves. You don't see the things that are objectively, a flaw. You really only can focus on the good things, because I think it is naturally idealistic to fall in love with somebody. And that's kind of how Nines sees Gavin. So pretty much with that he's in white, and then at the very last scene he's in gray. So that's the lightest color he wears in the whole film. But it's still not white, and he'll never get to wearing white in real life, I don't think, because Gavin is who he is. He's not perfect. He'll never, he can't just 100% recover from the things that he's been through. They've had an impact on his personality. They have had an effect on his life. They have wired him in a way to where, his past is his past. You can't change it, and it influences him forever. But he is healing, and he is improving, and he is healthier, and he is going to get better. And I think that that's basically the direction that the gray shirt goes into in that final scene, to show that it's the happiest he's probably ever been in real life. And that's just going to keep getting better and better for him. And a lot of people have commented and picked that up, the symbolism of those colors in the film, which is really awesome. And then finally, with Ada. Ada was super cool to design the costumes for. A lot of fun. I tried to go with something that was futuristic, that was elegant, but was also feminine and dangerous at the same time, because I definitely wanted her to be a feminine character, a character that was strong, but was very much unabashedly, a woman, and that there wasn't any sort of trying to, make her into a strong female character by just making her a man. I think I wanted to embrace the fact that she's very, very beautiful, and very feminine, while also finding strength in her femininity. And so I liked the designs where she would have these sleeves that were cut, these flowy sleeves where her arms could kind of peek out, and it was like a cape design. You could also say that she's kind of being cloaked, which is symbolic of her character as well. But I definitely tried to keep that in all of her costumes, with some kind of cut shoulder sort of design. Jillian was funny the night of the bar, because in that the leather pants and the white shirt and that long black cape, she was like, "I feel like Princess Leia." So and I could see that it was kind of a Princess Leia sort of design for her costumes. This is a good question, Gets. How long did it take me to feel satisfied with the representation of different things that made it in the film? Sexuality, mental health stuff, trauma, everything. I wasn't satisfied till I saw that other people didn't hate me for it. I was like, there's definitely a lot of self-doubt and you question yourself until people respond to it, because you always wonder if you have some sort of thing that you've missed, like some big elephant in the room that you've just completely looked past, and whether you've completely botched it in terms of the ace rep, in terms of the gay rep, in terms of the trauma. I mean, these are heavy topics that you don't want to represent wrong, and you don't want to present in a way that is inaccurate or unfaithful or offensive at worst. So, it was one of those things where we did a lot of thinking about it. We did a lot of talking about it. We did a lot of collaboration on those things, particularly in the case of the asexual rep. I tried to do some stuff to the script when we were actually shooting it. In the original script, there was a lot of focus on Nine's body, on the fact that he did not have the physical capabilities of having sex. But then one of the things that me and Chris and Maximilian did was right before we shot the rooftop scene, we rewrote a lot of the dialogue. And we basically cut anything that was about his body, because I was like, it's not about his body. Even if he had the parts, even if he was built for it, I think he'd still be Ace. I think that that's an inherent thing. It's not something that can be changed. And I don't want to imply that it's a thing that can be changed. So we moved along, from that. So I was pretty satisfied with that by the end, because I was like, I think we've kind of done everything we can to show this in a way that is subtle, hopefully not so subtle that people don't pick up on it or don't feel seen by it, but that is subtle enough and unobtrusive enough to where it's like, this is here, but we're not necessarily making a statement about it. It's just like we're just showing this character is experienced. And whenever you're tackling something like what Nines has, which is internalized aphobia, that's when it gets really like kind of scary when you're approaching that, because it's like, oh, I really hope people don't see this as like I'm calling him flawed or anything like that. No, like by the end, the moral is that there's nothing wrong with him at all, that he's completely normal and that deserves acceptance, and it's beautiful that he is accepted. But I think as an asexual person myself, it's part of our journey is to go through that, is to think about that in terms of, am I enough for a partner, especially a partner who they themselves is not asexual? Am I enough? Do I deserve this relationship? Do I, is it okay that I'm different? These are things that are just part of the experience, and they might not always be happy things, but as long as the ending is happy, I think that hopefully people walk away feeling positive about it and feeling seen by it, instead of feeling like the movie is making a statement about like that those things are negative. Balcony scene made me cry, says Kim. Yeah, I will go ahead and say that's the scene that's affected me the most in editing. Editing that scene was like a spiritual experience. Like, I remember most of the time when I edit, I just edit the scene. I don't edit like the sound. I just edit the scene and then the sound I do later. And with that scene, I remember taking a 9-hour stretch of time, and I just I unpacked all the footage and every single line that was said. I not only picked the best footage, but I picked the best line delivery. And so by the end of the night, and with each subsequent line that I put in, I was just like getting hit more and more, because they delivered it so earnestly. Like Chris and Maximilian, they did not deliver that with any sense of awkwardness or irony. Like, they were completely invested in the dialogue they were saying, and that was just like so freaking amazing. Like, I think that's the reason that scene has so much power, is because they're so earnest. And then there was also a question about relating to what gets said about like addressing mental illness and trauma, and like that Gavin's trauma was really well prepared. I want to give Chris credit for that, because I feel like that was something that evolved throughout the process of making the movie. In the script, there's definitely backstory and stuff for Gavin, but I don't think he necessarily feels as traumatized in the scripts. But that was something that I think starting around the third day of shooting, Chris started to really understand and be like, okay, well, if this character went through this, and this, then this is how I'm going to behave. And a lot of the contributions that he made to the film, and with script changes and with other approaches in his performance, was very much informed by this concept that Gavin is traumatized at all times, that doesn't go away from scene to scene. He approaches every scene as a person who is traumatized. And so, props to him for that. I think that he can take a lot of credit for the portrayal of that in the film, because there's a lot of authenticity there, in keeping with Gavin's trauma and everything. Let me check on other stuff. How and where did we shoot the scenes of the city? Jane asked that a while back. We shot. Are you talking about the opening? Because that's all stock footage. Like all the footage of Detroit and stuff. Like that's all stock footage. We didn't actually shoot that. I just bought that. But the scene like on the rooftop, like everything's shot in Charleston, South Carolina. Like anything with Gavin and Nines. So like the stuff on the rooftop, that's just downtown Charleston. We found a porch in downtown Charleston and like off King Street, and it had a really good skyline, which is hard to find in Charleston because we don't have any skyscrapers. We actually have a height ordinance in the city where you're not allowed to build a building that's taller than the tallest, or taller than any of the church steeples. Like that's a law in our city. So finding like urban looking places was kind of a lucky find. How long did the entire movie take to make? We shot it in 7 days. I was in post-production for 6 months. Pre-production was 3 months. And then scripts took about a month. And then fundraising took from April through, really December. So we sort of shot the movie before we had all the money for it and then back paid a lot of it. The way Gavin improved from DA to DE was incredible. I could feel that there was a time between the two movies, and it was time they needed to build what they have in the second movie. Yeah, so people have asked me before, like, with Detroit Awakening, like, why didn't they kiss and stuff? And there was a lot of comments about that when I made Detroit Awakening. And at the time, I was like, guys, like, we have to do some character development here. Like, these guys barely even like each other. Like, they have to get to a point where they're on that, they're starting a friendship, and then you can go from there. And in hindsight, I think I probably could have led with a story like Detroit Evolution. Now that I've seen that a lot of people have watched DE as a standalone movie without even being aware of Detroit Awakening, and they've understood it and accepted it fine. But at the time I was like, no, like we need to explain like where RK900 comes from. We need to explain why he's Gavin's partner. We need to like transition from Gavin in the game to Gavin in DE, which is very different. And I think that Detroit Awakening does do a good job of that, where you see in Detroit Awakening, Gavin is still a rough and tumble person. He's not 100% on board with androids and doesn't really fully understand them. However, he definitely has already improved from the game. He's already like accepting of having an android partner, and a lot of Detroit Awakening is him trying to like sort of reconcile the fact that like, all right, this is my partner. He's an android. He's alive. I accept that. But okay, if he's alive, well, why isn't he responding adequately to seeing one of his people torn apart? Like, why isn't he showing emotion? Like, why is he still wearing this cyber life jacket? If you're gonna be free, be free. Like, I don't get it. So a lot of that is Gavin trying to like reconcile, like, all right, I'm okay with androids now, but I still don't understand them. Whereas in Detroit Evolution, like, he's pretty familiar with it at this point. Like, he loves Nines. He can see things from Nine's perspective as an android. Although, there are still moments in Detroit Evolution where Nines kind of schools Gavin on this. And I think that that's pretty cool, because when you are in a relationship with somebody who is, like, marginalized, even in some way, even if you love them, even if you're accepting, even if you are an ally, you're still going to have a lack of lived experience. And there's still going to be things that you just miss as somebody who's privileged. And the moment that Gavin is like, do you think that Lotso was lying about his sick girlfriend? And Nines kind of sternly is like, we don't have health care. I think that that's a fun moment in the film where Nines once again like shows that like, hey Gavin, like friendly reminder, like, I'm an android, like we're different, like we're oppressed in some ways, and you aren't. And I also like that Gavin doesn't argue with him in that moment. Like Gavin just sort of accepts it and is just like, you know what, you're right. I was not thinking about that. Hashtag make Tina a detective 2020. She's next. Yes, she's next. A lot of people, I've seen like mixed things about whether or not they thought Ada was the villain or something in the beginning. I have, my thing is this, like, if you guess that Ada was the villain, you're not necessarily like it's not necessarily like we had to have you not realize that. I think that there's so much foreshadowing in the film that by the time they get to the bar, you should probably be a little suspicious of Ada on some level. Whether or not you believe she's a red herring or whether or not you believe that she's actually the villain, you know, whatever. But there should be some air of suspicion there. That's why he says, where Tina says, you know, basic instinct, is because, like, with basic instinct, you spend the entire movie thinking there's something really suspicious about this blonde woman, but you're still not sure. And then by the end, it's like, oh, okay, like, she was innocent all along. But then at the very end, it's like, oh, shit, she wasn't. Like, that's kind of what we wanted to go for with Ada, to where you're not entirely supposed to trust her. The real twist of Ada was her actual origin story with Kamsky. Like, that was supposed to be the part that nobody could guess. And that was, and before, I know Simona knows this, I've talked about how if you guess who the villain is, that's whatever, but the why of the villain is more important to me. The why they are doing what they're doing, that's more important to me in terms of, like, the actual plot line. Ada, you know, happening to be the villain is one thing, but why Ada is the villain, and what her motivation is and how she got to, and her origin story, is a lot more interesting, I think, than just the fact that it's like a twist that she was the killer. Yeah, things from the trailer hit different. How about that trailer, though? There was no Feral Nines. Y'all talked about that for a month and a half, and that didn't happen. The power of editing. How much of it was improvised? We can talk about that on Saturday. I would say not a whole lot, just little lines here and there. My favorite fan theory that was completely wrong. Oh, I can tell you there were some, like, fanfics and stuff that I thought were awesome. Lady Faustus's one about Dr. Maria was really dope, where Dr. Maria was evil. There was also I'm Not Going Anywhere, which is, y'all go read that fic. It's so good. There was a lot of ideas in that fic that were based on the trailer, and it was kind of like how it could have gone based on the trailer, which is pretty different than what the movie actually turned out to be. But I love, like, there were some things in that fic where I was like, damn, I wish I had thought of that. And then there was, like, some ideas about how I think the idea that, like, there could be a second RK-900, that I could have had Maximilian acting against himself as a different evil version of his character. That is kind of one of the things where I'm like, that would have been really cool. Like, I kind of want to take that and actually make another movie with that, because that was so awesome. So I guess that was probably my favorite fan theory that was wrong, was the idea that there was gonna be, like, another 900 that had a different personality and was maybe evil or not deviant or something like that. Yeah, all those fics are on Archive of Our Own. Yeah, similar to the scene in Cyberlife Tower, which is probably why I didn't end up going with that route, because it would have been kind of, like, derivative of that. Was there a specific thing that was most difficult when shooting? Said Lion a while back. The combat, man. And, you know, we've gotten a lot of, like, that's, like, the one part of the movie that people are like, I don't know about that fight scene. That fight scene wasn't that great. Dude, we had, like, an 8-hour rehearsal, and that was it. Like, that was a long fight scene. That was, like, a minute and a half of choreography that Ada and Nines had to learn. And they only had 8 hours the day before. Then after that, we only had really, like, 6 hours to shoot the actual scene. And the cinematographer and the fight choreographer had never met. So they collaborated very well together, but in order to be economic on time, we did the entire fight sequence basically in 2 long takes on the Steadicam. So when people are like, oh, well, you could have, like, cut it, like, closer together and done, like, faster shots and stuff, I'm just like, no, I really couldn't have. Because all I have is, like, those long extended takes. We don't have a lot of, like, cut-ins and, like, close-ups and that and hit shots and that sort of thing, because we were already running behind schedule that day. Like, that was the one day where we wrapped, like, an hour and a half late, because it was our first day on set. We were still like getting in the groove of things. And you know, it took like till about day 3 to where we had all worked together before and like we could read each other's minds and we could like, you know, get into a rhythm. But yeah, doing a combat sequence like that on your first day of filming, especially when you're trying to be economic on time and on money, and you can't, you know, send your actors away for a week of rehearsals and stuff. That was really challenging. And I think Brett felt it as well. Like I think that he has talked about in interviews before of like, that combat shit, man, like that was tough. It's really, really hard to get that, you know, get that right. But I would say that they are both androids, and not only are they both androids, so the concept of that was very much like Cyberlife. I sent the Cyberlife fight to my fight choreographer and I said, make it like this. Because the concept is that both Eta and Nines have the same programming, which means that their actions are going to be completely mirrored to each other. That every time one makes a move, the other makes the exact same move. So that was sort of the intellectualism behind the fight. And I don't know if it necessarily translated. A lot of people are like, this doesn't look like fighting. But yeah, so that was definitely like really hard. But it actually inspires me though. Because it makes me want to make an entire short film that is just a John Wickian badass action sequence just to say fuck you. Like just out of spite. Like I want that to be the next thing I do, is just to make like a 6-minute long, like one take old boy, you know, John Wick fight sequence that absolutely knocks people's socks off, to just be like, yo, look, we can do action. Like, shut the fuck up. So yeah, let me see what else we got. Oh, Lady Fossa says, I love that Ada's Zen Garden outfit pattern resembles the structural framework of the Mind Palace before an android goes deviant. Was that intentional? Yes, it was intentional. I'm really glad that you picked up on that, actually, because when I was picking out that outfit, I loved that it looked like a cyber grid, that it looked like a digital outfit. And that is yet another example of an outfit where it's like caped, it's ponchoed to where she has a cutout in her sleeves. Also, she only has a sleeve on one arm, which is kind of cool. And I'm really glad of that, because that was her tattoo arm. 3 of our actors have wrist tattoos: Michael Smallwood, Chris Trindane, and Jillian Gertz. And luckily, Michael Smallwood was in long sleeves the whole film. But there is actually like the coma scene, particularly in the wide of the coma scene, you can see like fully Chris's arm as he's like holding, you know, Maximilian's hand. And I actually had to digitally airbrush his arm, because that was just a day that the tattoo makeup like rubbed off too much, and you can clearly see his tattoo on his arm in that scene if I had not doctored it. So yeah, that was a nightmare. His skin ate makeup like crazy. In the case of Jill, her tattoo is actually like, that stayed really well. I never noticed any scenes where you could tell that she had a tattoo peeking through. But I think both of them, it was on their right wrist. And she also has a tattoo actually that goes all the way up the back of her neck, a huge back tattoo that goes up the back of her neck. But her hair was always down, so we never had to worry about that. What about the white hand thing? That was a latex glove. That was pretty difficult to work with. The wrinkles were just goddamn impossible a lot of the time. We always tried to, for the most part, shoot it in a way where he could have a long sleeve and then we would like wrap it really tightly around his wrist to try to get out as many wrinkles as possible. But in the case of that interface scene at the end, he had to move his hand so much that it was really difficult to get that to work. In the case of the large latex outfit that he wears while at Cyberlife, I did a lot of digital doctoring of that as well. Usually there's about 3 points on his body which have been airbrushed in post to get out wrinkles. All this stuff you can see when I do my VFX stream next month. Probably on May 16th, Saturday, May 16th, I'll do a VFX stream, and I'll show you all my secrets, all the looks behind the curtain. There's a lot of things in this film that are visual effects that you might not realize are visual effects, because they're things that I like airbrushed in post. And wearable anxiety, yes, like that is what Maximilian called it. Austin and Maximilian have some hysterical things to share. You can ask them about that on Saturday in the cast stream. I also love that Nines can't control his interface near Gavin. I think that's really sweet. Let's see what else we got. My mods, a shout out to them, have been keeping an awesome list of questions. How do you think Gavin would see Nines in his dream world, says Chai Tian. I don't know. That's a good question. I think I think that he would see Nines as... I think Gavin idealizes Nines as a person who's maybe more physically intimidating than Nines actually is. I think he would mentally picture him as taller. He would mentally picture him as broader. He would mentally picture him as more commanding. Because I think to Gavin, Nines is this like strong, safe person who can take care of him. That's really all Gavin wants, is to be taken care of, even though he doesn't want to admit that. And it's one of the things that attracts him to Nines, is the fact that Nines is so committed to this idea of keeping him safe and protecting him. And so I think that might be how Gavin like mentally imagines Nines, is just that he's just this big, safe, like steady rock in his life that will always kind of be there to look after him. Yeah, Gavin wants to be as small. Absolutely. Like, Gavin is inside just as small. And yeah, he says, I want to protect people, I want to protect you. That's a reference actually back to Detroit Awakening. I'm surprised nobody's talked about that yet, actually. The fact that at the end he says, a while ago you asked me to figure out what I wanted. That's a reference to Detroit Awakening, because that's a conversation they have in that film. What was the feeling in the room after the first kiss scene? I'm sure we will talk about that more on Saturday as well, because like that was a big moment, and all of the cast except for Jill were present for that night. I have a video that I'm going to share next month on Patreon and on YouTube, I think, which I had a behind the scenes videographer named Justin Moscos on set that day, and he actually shot the behind the scenes of our first take of that. He has an uncut, like 3-minute long, you know, he's filming them from afar, and then he'll like go back and like show us like watching from the monitor, and he'll show the cameraman and all that stuff. And then you can see that when I yell cut on that first take, we all clap. That's what the air was like, because it was like none of us were breathing. Like we were all completely just like, we understood not only how important it was to the film, but also that Maximilian and Chris were really approaching that scene with a lot of like emotion and a lot of commitment. And we needed to create an environment that allowed them to work. And so, yeah, it was electric that night. It was so magical. And that was a day where I was exhausted. I was almost ill because I had not taken very good care of myself. Like, I was really fading. And then at 10 o'clock at night when we were shooting that scene, and Brett was like, my Steadicam is downstairs in the car, but I'm gonna go grab it and get it and build it because it needs it. This scene needs Steadicam. And I was just like, oh God. But it was the right choice. Like I you know, we all just came together, and we put aside the things that were difficult. We put aside the things that were challenging because we knew it had to be right. And we were all happy to do it. So that's pretty much what the air was like. It was absolutely just like, we were all just gasping. Carla was sobbing beside me. Like, as soon as she exited the scene, you know, with Michael Smallwood, like, she came over, and Michael, you know, came over to me too, and we were all just like, we were all around the monitor, like it was, you know, like we were waiting for lottery numbers to come up or something like that, and we were just watching them, and we're just completely silent. And, you know, It was crazy. Like Carla's crying, and I'm just like hug her and try to comfort her. And yeah. Like I went home that day and I posted on Facebook. I was like, I think I've put the most beautiful thing on film that I will ever put to film. And that's all I said. I was just like, this is the most beautiful thing I have ever made. I don't know if I will ever make anything more beautiful than what we just did tonight. Hopefully, eventually. But if that's my peak, whatever. Like, I peaked high because we knew like that was gonna just be the linchpin of the whole film. That scene, like we just knew. Let's see what else we got. How was Ada able to get access to the files of the Detroit PD? They were sent to her by the guys. Basically, they were a way of like updating her on where they were with the case. She does not have the most confidential version of them, but she has just basic outlines of like, all right, here's your people. Here's some of the people at Jericho. Like, these are the people who had stuff to say, and this is basically just giving you an update on where we are with the case. So she wasn't hacking or anything like that. They were just given to her as like a presentation, by the DPD to prove to her that they were doing the work. Oh, we got Austin in the chat. Is that happening? I see at Austin Butts, but I don't see what he had to say. I'm not going to scroll. All right, let's see what else we got. How difficult was the shot with Tina and Chris staring at Nines and Gavin after they kissed? I actually want to talk about that because... All right, guys, I have a confession to make. Buckle in for this one. We only shot 2 kisses. We only had 2 kisses in the script. Chris and Maximilian, particularly Chris, only thought there was going to be 2 kisses in the movie before he saw the movie. Because what happened was we had, and I'll show you guys this, like, an uncut footage and all that sort of stuff. Like, you'll see, like, this eventually. This will be given away. But basically, they kiss in the middle of the scene, and then Gavin says, guess we've got some catching up to do. And then the scene ends. Like, that's how it is in the script. That's what we shot. Every time he said, guess we've got some catching up to do, I yelled cut. But what ended up happening was, on our last take, we got together, we were like, wouldn't it be funny if we shot a take where we just rack focus to Chris and Tina, like, watching them in the background, and we'll just do it for the gag reel, we'll just do it for bloopers. It'll be a lot of fun. What ended up happening was, number one, that shot turned out so beautiful that it's actually the shot I used as the main kiss. Like, that wide was absolutely fantastic. The first one they did was great too, but this one was just like, had so much more passion and stuff in it, and it just worked better. Like, they didn't have the nerves that they did on the first take. And then we racked focus to, Chris and Tina, and it was really funny. It was difficult because in order to rack focus on Steadicam, you have to have a person who isn't Brett doing the focus, which usually in the fight scene was me, and God only knows how many times I messed that up. But in this case, it was our first assistant director, Brittany Brock, and she had never touched a follow focus before. So there were a couple takes, like Gavin's close-up, she struggled with a little bit because it was so hard. She just couldn't get a feel for like how to keep him in focus. But on that take, she nailed it, and she kept everything perfectly in focus, and she was able to go straight to Chris in the background, and it was in focus, and it was perfect. In the editing process, about January, I was re-editing that scene and finishing it up, and I knew that I absolutely had to use Chris's close-up at the beginning of the kiss because of that look that he gives Nines. And I knew that I wanted to do the wide for the main part of the kiss. Maximilian's close-up I really wasn't touching. I wasn't doing anything with it. And I hadn't really even looked at it because I knew that I wasn't going to use it. I knew that I already had footage that I wanted to use for the kiss. So I'm doing this editing and I look at Maximilian's close-up and I'm like, there's something really beautiful about this close-up. Because I love that Nines is the one who leans in a little bit to it, but Gavin finishes the final 10%. Like, he leans in 90 and then Gavin does the 10, and it's just a very, like, gentle version of that kiss. And I'm like, I wonder if I could tack this on at the end of the scene. And that's what I did. And it took me, like, 8 hours and, like, God only knows, like, 15 or 16 different iterations. I was sending GIFs of this fucking kiss to the mod chat over and over. Poor Neb and Pillow and JJ because they had to see these guys over and over because I kept being like, this motion, it doesn't quite line up. I need to remove a frame here. I need to remove a frame here. And trying to get the timing right between, guess we've got some catching up to do, and then that slight lean in that Maximilian happened to do at the end of that scene, and then matching it with the kiss was tough. But the thing that ultimately sold that kiss as the second kiss was the fact that I extended it just a little bit more, and I took that joke take and I ended it on that. And that completely sells it, is the fact that we shot 2 different moments when actually we only shot 1. So, editing, everybody. That is one of my favorite stories from post-production, was the fact that, surprise, it's only actually 1 kiss. I copied and pasted the same kiss twice into my film. Let's see what else we've got. Luke Lemon asks, how many kisses were there all together? I imagine that question is asking me, how many did we shoot? We shot 4 takes of the reunion scene, and you basically see all of them between those 2 kisses. You see, the only thing you have not seen is the first wide, the first take that we shot. I have not included any of that in the actual film. But you'll definitely see it. You'll see it in the behind the scenes Justin Moscos thing, because that's what he was shooting. And you'll also see it in uncut footage. It was a really beautiful take. I did actually use a bit of that take when they're approaching each other, and Gavin is just like, you heard all that stuff I said, and they're like backing away from each other. That is that take. So there is some of that take that makes it in, but the actual like kiss part, like none of that made that in from that take. It is a really beautiful take though. It's very tender, it's very emotional. It was like the first time that they did this performance, so there's like a rawness and a newness to it that's really nice. So I'll definitely be sharing that at some point. You will get to see that. And then the rooftop, we shot 5. We shot 3 wides and 2 close-ups. The close-ups are kind of not really usable. Like, they just didn't really work. One of the wides made it into the film, and then the 2 other wides are both great in their own way. They're different than what made it into the film. They're each of them have their own kind of unique approach that was really cool, and that is worth sharing. So you'll definitely get to see them. What I've been doing on my Twitter is I've been posting little unused bits of footage through GIFs and stuff. Like today I posted, there's a moment from the rooftop where they actually like touch hands, which is really cute. You'll be seeing all of this. I'm going to be putting together these unused footage reels, which is basically not deleted scenes, but moments that were in the film just from alternate angles and alternate deliveries and stuff, or like little moments or alt takes that didn't make it in. So I have at least, I guess, 3 kisses that you haven't seen that are pretty good, that are worth sharing. So that's something to look forward to, I guess. Brian's streaming right now. Since when does Brian stream during Apu? Oh, when Apu goes to 1:15, that's why. Let's see what we also got. How did Ada reactivate herself After she got deactivated when Project RK100 had been exposed, did somebody reactivate her for a purpose? That's from Hello Sweeties. I would say it's very similar to Marcus's coming back from the dead from the junkyard. Pretty much a similar story arc to where they probably, like, you know, just disposed of her, like, tore her apart and threw her in a junkyard and thought, oh, that'll do it. I don't think they necessarily, like, did anything out of their way to remove her therium pump or her central processing core. I think they just literally, like, you know, turned her off and then threw her in a junkyard. So she's extremely resilient. That's kind of her thing. She can adapt to any circumstances. So she was able to crawl out of the pit. We were promised none and we got 3 and now we're getting more, says Luke. I mean, yeah, maybe. From a certain point of view. I love that there's 3. I mean, because like I said, we only shot 2. And yeah, so we actually had to shoot the rooftop 5 times because of the light. We were shooting at sunset and the light was fading. And you can see in the GIF that I posted today, it was already like night by that time. And so I was like, all right, you know, let's do this last take of the night just in case we have to, you know, in case everything else is so inconsistent that we just have to do the whole thing dark. But I love that there is a sunset because it rained like that whole week. And I was so worried that it was going to be rainy and dreary on the night that we shot that. But it was the one night that it was clear. And I was really like, praise Cthulhu, because I wanted my beautiful sunset. Scrolling back up to try to find more questions. What were we shooting when we got rained on? Oh, that night where we were absolutely drenched. And Chris and Maximilian posted a picture together of them soaking wet. That was the Lotso scene. We were shooting the Lotso scene in an alley. And we wrapped that right before a torrential downpour absolutely washed us all out. Poison Tips asks, was Zen Garden Gavin actually broken? For a second after he talked to Nines, he stopped glitching, and I was wondering if that had some significance. It probably was just because I was too lazy at that point to finish the visual effects. But yes, he actually was broken. He was corrupted. Nines' entire Zen Garden was corrupted. In fact, there was a subtle detail in Nines' Zen Garden where in all of the scenes, once it becomes corrupted between Ada and Glitchy Gavin, the birds chirp backwards in his Zen Garden in all those scenes. So there's little subtle details of distortion in those scenes. How long were the shooting days on average? About 12 hours. Subtle but creepy. Yeah. What happened to the body of Ada? That is explained in the news segment. All the biocomponents were returned to the families, yes, including the Tracys. Basically, that body was an accumulation of all the biocomponents that she had collected, and the DPD considered that the cache of biocomponents and basically disassembled it and sent all the parts back to the families of the loved ones who of the people who they belonged to. No, you weren't imagining backwards birds. But yeah, shooting days were about 12 hours. That's pretty standard in film. A lot of indie films push it hard. They go 14, 18 hours. I don't believe in that. I don't have the stamina for it. I like 12-hour, union-sized shooting days with a 12-hour turnaround. A 12-hour turnaround was sometimes tough. Sometimes I had to fudge it a little and it was like, okay, maybe we only have like an 8 or 10 hour turnaround. But I always wanted to make sure there's at least 12 hours between when we go home and when we go to set again. It's just for safety. It's to allow people to get rest and all that. So there were a couple days, for the crew, it was often more like 13 and a half hour days because, the cast would come about an hour into the day. But I wanted to make sure my cast never really had to work over 12 hours. That's... crew kind of expects to be the first one there and the last one to leave, but cast, 12 hours is pretty standard for them. What was the longest shooting day like, and what was the latest you were up shooting? We had an overnight. We shot the bar stuff, interior and outside. We shot the rooftop scene, and we shot the Ada and Nines walking down the street and all the alley stuff, all in the same night. Funny enough, the rooftop scene was immediately followed by Nines getting crippled in the alley because that was the same location. So immediately after they shot the rooftop scene, they went and shot, Gavin fighting Nines in the alley. And then they immediately went and shot all the bar stuff, including the argument. So it's kind of interesting from the perspective of actor, standpoint, of acting out this extremely romantic, rooftop scene, and then 4 hours later be arguing outside of a bar. Actors are amazing. Like the fact that they can get into that mental state and shift it and not be bothered by it. But that was an overnight. We did, I think it was like 5 p.m. to 4 a.m. was that shoot. And that was intentional. Like we prepared everybody for it. We told them like we were going to be doing this overnight shoot, and they knew. But the longest shoot day was the combat day. I think that was the one day that we went too long. We went over schedule. We were like an hour and a half like late because it was our first day, and combat's really difficult to shoot. And we also had we were getting used to each other and stuff. The backwards see-through effects of the tablets in the Zen Garden scene blew my mind, says Lady Foster's. How long did those take? Not as long as you might think. Luckily, I have HUD element template packs, so I don't have to build any of that from scratch. There's like little, pieces that you can kind of build. Ninja Noodles, I don't think she's in the chat anymore, but she actually watched me do one of them on a Patreon call, where you just drag elements into a little composition, and you replace the ones, like the pictures of things. Pictures of people, and then you just take that and plop that into your scene and make it like low opacity, put a screen filter on it, and then what you have to do is you motion track the thing that you're tracking. I don't know if you guys know this, but in the scene where they meet Ada for the first time, there's a television in the background that says like "Welcome to New Jericho." That's fake. That's done in post. That TV was off in real life. So all of like that little graphics and stuff that's on that TV was added in post-production as well. So basically what you do is you just track that object, and then you take your little screen and you apply it to the tracker, and it just automatically does it. Some of these things were easier than others. The Jericho TV was really easy. Pretty much it synced right up. The tablets that Ada was holding, my God, I had to basically keyframe that because there's just something about the shot. There was something about the shakiness of it or the angle that things just tracked really wobbly, and I just had to keyframe it. And so frame by frame, just like nudge it and readjust it and make sure that it works. So those took a really long time. But the ones in the DPD, like Gavin's computer, which I recommend you guys zoom in on Gavin's computer, by the way, you might find something fun. Gavin's computer wasn't that hard though. Sophie says, I love that in Nine's memories, when he's erasing the Zen Garden, there was Gavin, and then boom, lesbians. Yeah, so I love that some of you have pointed out that there's a moment there where he is watching Tina and Valerie, and then Gavin very briefly looks at him and kind of offers like a half smile a little bit. That is an important moment in that part of the movie because they've been struggling with each other, through that day. They've been having a lot of strife. But at that point, and you can kind of tell, like, when Gavin leaves Jericho that day, he's in a bad mood, but he's not yelling and angry anymore. He's just like, Nines, I'm still upset. Like, I don't want to talk about this right now. He's a little bit more calm about the way he feels, and he's pushing Nines away still, but he's doing it in a way that's a little bit more remorseful than it was in the morning. So by the time they get to the bar, I think Gavin's like almost ready to make peace with Nines, and then Ada shows up and Nines leaves him for Ada, and so that's when he just like breaks down and has to leave the bar. But yeah, I wanted like Gavin to kind of have that moment of like peace offering with Nines, like when they look at Tina and Valerie and they look back at each other of like, okay, I'm ready. Like, let's go back to being us. I'm tired of arguing. But then, of course, that scene takes a turn. Let's see what else we got. During shooting days, would you stick to the storyboard or improvise? We didn't have a shot list or storyboard, actually. It was pretty much all off the cuff. And Brett doesn't typically work that way. But it was really necessary to just... By the time, like, we got into the second or third day, Brett and I really had an understanding of, like... He understood what I needed in post. And he had an intuition. I mean, he's such an experienced cinematographer. Like, he does this for a living. He's an extremely successful cinematographer. He shot for the NFL. He's shot, you know, like Mercedes-Benz commercials and stuff. He's done amazing work. He kind of understood, like, basically with every scene, we would start with a master shot, like a wide that just covered everything, that if all else fails, like, we can insert this very simple standard shot into the edit whenever we need to cover things up. Then we would move in for close-ups, and then after close-ups we would move in for like inserts, or we would move in for, you know, reaction shots, or we would move in for like goofy, you know, fun shots that were a little more experimental. And from there, that was just our process. Like by the time we were shooting the hospital on the 6th day, I was just sitting there chilling. And, which is the only time I've ever gotten to do that on a set. But I was just sitting there chilling, and he did a close-up or whatever, and, or like a medium shot, like a 2-shot of Tina and Gavin. And he's like, I think I'm going to move in for a close-up on Tina now. And I was just like, I was literally just about to tell you to do we had such an understanding of each other by the end. I mean, we had a process by the end that wasn't like a list. I mean, it was just an understanding. It was just intuition. What was the longest time it took for you to edit one of the scenes? Probably one that had a lot of sound issues, which was probably... The bar was tough. Scene 12, which is the Zen Garden scene with Gavin, where they're talking about the case. Sound was kind of difficult on that one, so that one took a good bit. The first Jericho scene is so long, where they meet Ada, and there's so much footage, and there's 4 different microphones going on. Like, that one was tough. But really, the fight scene took a good bit. Like, that was such a long sequence, because you have the fight scene part, but then you have all the part after where they're talking about letting Ada go and stuff. That's all scene 39. It's all the same scene. So that one took a good bit. And then the sound was just awful to deal with on that scene as well. So, and quite frankly, I would say it's a little unfinished. There's bits of the movie that are unfinished. I was finishing the movie 9 hours before I put it online, and there were some things in it that I was just like, I'm just gonna have to live with this. You know, they say movies are never finished, they're only abandoned. And that was the case here. But I didn't want to push back the deadline. I didn't want to push back the release date. I think that would have been really a bad idea. So I was just like, whatever, there's things that I'm just going to live with, and that's going to be this. And Premiere crashing on me 300 times last week was also, you know, not ideal and not actually conducive to me being able to do certain things, but it is what it is. Yes, Nine's curse is in this movie. That was something I wanted to include to show Gavin's influence on him. Was there anything that ended up in the YouTube version of the film that you noticed later and went, fuck? The fact that it's a little quiet, and I don't know why that is, because I balanced it perfectly in Premiere. It shouldn't run quiet, but I don't know. Like, there's certain sound codec things that I don't really get why they didn't translate when I put it on YouTube, or, you know, when I rendered the final file. I think at some point I do want to remix the entire movie sound-wise and then re-upload the new audio, because I think you can do that on YouTube. I think you can do a full audio track replacement. You can't replace the video, but you can replace the audio. Speaking of which, I have taken off the credits music of the film. Right now it's silent, but hopefully I'll be able to just replace it with something else later. And I don't know if it's silent yet. It was still processing last I did it. in order to make the movie not have ads. Because they fucking ate up my movie with ads because of that frickin' credit song, which is a royalty-free stock song, and I don't know why they monetized it immediately when I put it on YouTube. I'm so pissed about it. But I took it off because I know you guys like that song or whatever, but they put ads every 5 minutes in my movie, and I'm just not here for it. So in order to get the ads off of it and not to get it monetized anymore by anybody, I've taken the credit song out, and we'll probably be putting up one of YouTube's like stock songs in its place. So that's probably the thing that I said fuck about when I uploaded it to YouTube was, fuck, it's monetized. Do you know how Valerina met? I don't know how they met, but I can tell you that Valerie is a lawyer. So they both work in the justice system. When creating the plot of DE, do you have any scrapped plot ideas? Tons. Yeah. I mean, we have been developing DE since April of last year after Detroit Awakening. There were a lot of things that I envisioned in my original version of this film that didn't make it in. It was originally more of an action movie and less of a romance. You know, there was some definitely still Read 900 in it, but in that version of the film, it was kind of like there's this big, like, undercover gangster plot. There was going to be a big action sequence, you know, a big fight scene, bar brawl kind of scene, you know, with these gangsters. And then Read 900 would basically kiss at the very end. I always had the rooftop sequence as my end. That was always going to be the way the movie ended, was that they were going to have a conversation on the roof about their relationship and they were going to kiss at the end. And that was going to be the last shot of the movie from the very beginning. But in this version of the film, it's definitely much more of an actual romance. And when we cast Chris or we're looking for a new Gavin, I was like, let's lean in more to the romance elements of it. It doesn't make sense in the context of this film for their first kiss to be at the end, especially after the conversation that they have. I want that kiss on the rooftop to be familiar and to be comfortable and to not be new or the first of anything. If they're going to kiss, it's going to be, you know, for the first time, it's going to take them like a lot more effort and a lot more thought and a lot more emotion to get to that point. I can't just have them do it. So I wrote 2 kisses into the film, and that became an idealization of me, because like I love the concept of having them get together before the big finale, because I love the idea of them going into the big finale as a couple, as like this power couple. That was really cool. So that changed, you know, along the way. Originally that wasn't like that. They just got together at the very end. But then I went with the finale power couple idea instead. As I said, there was like this gangster plot and undercover. There's like an undercover mission where they go undercover in a strip club. There was like a lot of stuff like that didn't make it in because it would have just been very bogged down, because I always wanted Ada to be the villain. She had different motivations and a different origin story completely in the beginning, but it was always Ada. It was always this like female RK model who had, you know, a grudge and was, you know, collecting parts and stuff. That was always the plot line. And hiding that under like this red ice ring stuff, like there just was no time for that. Like I did not have time for like tertiary antagonists. That we just didn't have the resources, the time, or a plot that would make sense with any of that. So that all got cut and then got focused on more of just like a straightforward serial killer plotline. Wordmate just said, I'd have fight for 4 hours to export a 3-minute music video I made from Premiere. Can't imagine rendering anything longer than that. Yeah, it took about 5 hours to render DE from Premiere. Let's see. Did we write the ending first or chronologically? I always write chronologically. I can't write out of order. Script is definitely written chronologically. And I'm an outliner. I'm not a pantser. So I definitely had like a full outline for the script before I started. And I went through a lot of different outlines of the script trying to figure out what story I wanted to tell before I did it. What difficulties did I face when casting the actors as Not Angry Golden Retriever? I would say there were a couple difficulties. The difficulty with Ada is that I had like 1,000 submissions. I had like 25 or 30 women audition for Ada. I looked at a lot of potential Adas. And I wasn't actually imagining her as blonde at first, because in the original version of who she was actually an RK-700. She was Connor's predecessor. So I always imagined that she would look like a female Connor, like brown hair, brown eyes. And then Jillian shows up with blue eyes and blonde hair, and looks like she just walked out of Basic Instinct. And I was like, I love it. I love this aesthetic for this character. Let's do it. She actually looks a lot like Maximilian as well, if you look closely. Like she kind of resembles him in a way. They look like they could be siblings. So I did kind of like that as well, that they had that physical similarity, to where I kind of do imagine Ada and Nines is a little bit of a brother-sister kind of relationship. As far as Jillian as well, she delivered a great performance. And also in her cover letter, she said that she was a queer actress and that she really liked the idea of being part of an LGBT project. And for me, as a casting director, I was like, well, not only is she fantastic, but I think that putting her in front of a platform that, has a lot of LGBT fans and stuff is really cool for her, and will give her a good opportunity. So, and then after she auditioned, I realized that she was the star of Hell House LLC too, and I love the Hell House movies, so that was really cool as well. Like she's done a lot of really awesome film stuff in the past. She's very established. She's super professional. So I'm very thrilled at the reaction that you guys have had to Ada and had to Jill, because she absolutely deserves it. And definitely go send her some love on Instagram at Jilbo Baggins NYC. She's a big LOTR fan. As far as casting Gavin, it was just a matter of like finding somebody who looked like Gavin, who was Gavin's height, who could reasonably be a romantic lead aside Maximilian and have chemistry with him. Like, all that was really difficult to cast, but we always knew we wanted Chris. From the moment we saw his headshot in July, he just struck us, and the fact that he happened to have a mutual friend with Maximilian was really like goofy and kind of like the universe telling us to go in that direction. And as we've said before in the past, and now I'm sure you believe the hell out of this, it was in his eyes. You can just see in his headshot that he had something in his eyes that just penetrates the screen and is effervescent and transcendent. And I mean, he did it in the film. I think I had mentioned before the film came out, I said, guys, there is this shot in the film that kills me when all that man has to do is look at the ground and then look up, and I die. And you know which shot I'm talking about now. So yeah, like, Chris is fantastic. He's extremely talented, and we're blessed to have had him aboard and to have him be enthusiastic about the project and take a chance on us. What else we got? Did Carla start to lower out of the shot during the reaction to the kiss? So she actually asked me, she's like, do you want me kneeling or do you want me standing? And I was like, oh, kneeling is cute. And then I did not anticipate Nine's arm being in the way. So, oh well, we only kind of had one shot at that take, because I was really trying to limit like the number of times I was making these poor actors make out. So I was like, we're not gonna run it again. Like, this was the last shot of the night. Literally, we were just doing it for fun. We were doing it for the gag reel. I was not planning on actually putting it in the movie, so I wasn't gonna go back and make them do it again. But in the gag reel that's coming up, there is an extended version of that moment, because I did cut it before it actually got ridiculous. And she does yell something at Gavin, and Gavin yells, shut up, and it's great. But you'll just have to wait until you see the next gag reel to find out what it is that she yells. Let's see what else we got. You remember I put that Chris's headshot on Discord being so hopeful? Yeah, I was. And we were all like, oh my god, it's him. A lot of people remember that. Sparkly eyes. The man's eyes glitter. I have gifs of just like, how do they glitter? I don't understand. It's like he's got anime eyes or some shit. What scene did I love the most to shoot? Says Mimi Berra. Let me think about that. So I can tell you this, that with the scene that I was most excited to shoot was the stakeout, because that's my favorite scene in the script. I love the conversation that happens in the stakeout. I love the subtleties, the fact I'm very proud of writing that scene, because it's always a strength in writing when you're able to write characters who are saying things that are different from what they're thinking. There's some real cool opportunities for acting when you do that, and it's also a really fun way to show character and show depth when characters are saying things aloud that they don't mean. And then, you know, most of the time we have to have characters say what they mean completely in order for clarity. And it's a little boring, because it's like, humans don't really act like that. We lie, we withhold the truth, we bend things to be our perspective. We don't just say what we're thinking all the time or say what we're feeling. And so that's a really restrained scene, because literally Gavin and Nines are saying exactly what they mean, with the exception of context, and they want the other person to give them something that neither one of them is giving. Both of them want validation from the other, but both are too afraid to give it. So that was a scene I was really excited to shoot, and it was a lot of fun. That was a really fun night. We went back to the Detroit Awakening police station set, and we shot that in the parking lot, actually, because our set fell through. We were supposed to shoot that scene after we shot the first kiss, but that day was running really long, and we ended up just being like, we'll shoot this on a different day. But our location fell through, so we had to emergency find a new location. I just called up Michael Whaley and was like, can we shoot at the Detroit Awakening place, because it's his workplace? And he was like, all right, yeah, just come shoot in the parking lot, whatever. So we were able to do that back at that location. But as far as scenes that I liked shooting, I mean, I loved shooting the first kiss. I mean, that night was so magical. I'll never forget it. So that was pretty much that. The whiplash between Nines opening up and Gavin making a joke about him sleeping with Nines hurts. Oh, no. It was a joke about him sleeping with Ada. But yeah, it's Gavin likes to break the tension with the fact that I think Gavin was trying to reassure himself a little bit in that moment. Because basically what Nines just said is like, no, I'm not attracted to Ada, like, you can calm the hell down. And Gavin's just like, oh, so you don't want to fuck her, then yay! And then Nines is like, how dare you? And then Gavin, like, you can see his face, like, sort of fall, like, oh crap, like, I crossed a line, I didn't mean to do that, I'm gonna just, you know, hey, look, it's a guy in a flaming boa, let's focus on that and not focus on the fact that I just offended the person I love. So yeah, I think one of the endearing traits of Gavin in this film actually is the fact that every time that Nines, like, feels like Gavin crossed a line or said something that was offensive or said something that was just tone deaf, like, you know, when he doesn't realize the fact that androids don't have free healthcare. Every time Gavin does that and Nines calls him out, Gavin backs off. Like, Gavin isn't a type of person to just pester and bully anymore. Like, he is a type of person who doesn't want to offend Nines because he loves him. Like, he's kind of a jerk. Like, he's kind of, you know, he's not going to stop being, you know, snarky and stuff, but he knows when he's crossed a line, and he doesn't want to actually hurt Nines in any way. Like, he only wants to give Nines grief that Nines can give back to him tenfold, which is why in the DPD scene, you know, they're roasting each other completely. But when Nines pulls out the, I have 200,000 words in the English language and none of those describe you, Gavin just says, shut the fuck up, and moves on. Because he's just like, I can't beat that anymore. I truce, I'm done. Let's see. Gavin's an asshole, but he knows when to back off. I should be drinking water. The reason I'm drinking caffeine is so I can be alive right now. And also because my throat, like my sinuses, are draining. Let me see what else we've got. What was the funniest thing someone did on set? Oh, we did a whole. There's 2 sequences, and I'm going off this because I have like long extended outtakes of both these things that I'll share with you guys over time. The first one is that JJ, Maximilian, and Chris, once we finished the Lotso scene, did an entire like skit where Gavin takes Lotso's box and opens it up and just starts going through everything and making comments on all of it. And I actually did that for Chris because I was like, Chris, I'm going to put a bunch of random shit in this box. And this is like prop comedy. You're not supposed to look at what's here. I want you to pick everything up and like come up with something to say about it. There was a high heel. There was a box of Cheez-Its. There was all sorts of stuff in that box. So we have that. We have the just the running commentary of all the different things that were in Lotso's box. That was really funny. The second thing is when we shot the scene with Dr. Maria. I don't know what it was. I think it was just Carla and Chris had such a humor with each other, but they could not stop laughing. There was this moment where they were both like, we're trying to be grief. And the more they tried to make themselves sad, the more they laughed. And I just have like a whole minute. And you can hear me yelling in the background. I'm like, your boyfriend's in a coma. And then you just start singing Girlfriend's in a Coma by the Smiths. And it's great. I think that that's one of the things that just still cracks me up to this day. Hieroglyphics or It Didn't Happen, also funny. When we were doing our focus test, that's on YouTube if you want to see that. It's actually linked in my latest video. So when they were just yelling gibberish at each other during a focus test was super fun. And then finally, jacket cops. Cops who wear jackets. The first day when we shot the fight scene, when Michael and Chris got to work together as Gavin Michael and Chris as Gavin and Chris got to work together in the little scenes, the inner cuts where Gavin is trying to shoot the computer and like Chris is telling him to stay behind and all that. All that stuff was the first stuff that either of them shot for the movie. And they start like joking about how they should have a spin-off show called Jacket Cops, Cops That Wear Jackets. And it became a running joke for like the whole set. Every time Gavin and Chris had a scene together, just the two of them, they would start it by just being like, Jacket Cops! So I have like a whole freaking sequence of that in the gag reel as well. So all that's fantastic. I treasure all of that, and you will be seeing all of it in our various gag reels and stuff in the coming months. Yes, going through the box was recorded, Jaina. We will be posting that on Patreon soon. That's going to be one of the outtakes that we post. Was the Y'all Have a Nice Day written? No, it was improvised. Definitely improvised. If you go and watch the original posting of that scene on YouTube, I extended it just a little bit where you can hear Michael on his microphone after he exits the scene, and he's just like, they're never going to let me keep that. And I did. Yeah, of course there was a high heel in Lotso's box. We know that. How many takes did I have to do with 9 stopping that guy's punch? Not too bad. There's one in the gag reel where you can see him really mess up. But there was only like 3 or 4 takes. Maximilian, they practiced quite a few times before we rolled. So yeah, we didn't have to do too many. I love how Nines is the only one allowed to be fun of or be mean to Gavin. Yeah, we were talking about that in the Discord last night, I think, actually, of how Nines roast Gavin all the time, but as soon as Ada starts to say bad stuff about Gavin, he immediately stands up for him, even though they just had a big fight. You know, their love is not fragile. Did Chris do the whole conversation in the car through the talkie? Oh. Or did Chris hear the whole conversation in the car through the talkie? So my headcanon for this, and the way this was written in the script, is that Gavin reaches and flips off the radio before that happens. So you can kind of assume that Chris did not hear that conversation. As far as actually recording that, Michael Smallwood was not on set that day. All of that vocalization of Michael Smallwood was recorded like a week ago and plopped into the film. He like recorded it at home and I just put it in the movie. The person who was actually feeding Maximilian and Chris their lines and giving them the adequate space to pause and react to what Chris Miller was saying was JJ in the trunk. And I have the footage that is raw of Chris and Maximilian as Gavin and Nines in the stakeout, and you can hear JJ's voice in the back from the trunk being like, "You better not leave me alone at my promotion party next week." And so that's super cute. And that's why when we were watching the movie for the first time, Austin was beside me. And, you know, he had to watch the movie in rough cut form to compose the music. He was watching that and he's like, "Oh, it's nice to actually hear Michael Smallwood in this scene right now because I'm used to just hearing JJ from the trunk." Oh, yeah, JJ, you want to spill that so bad. Oh, we've got some funny stuff, some funny footage, too. He looks like a cryptid in the back. He's just going like this in the back. And it's very subtle. He looks like a ghost. Did the props ever mess up a take? Says that geek Ellie. Oh, yeah. So the crowbar broke when in the fight scene once. Didn't mess up the take, but that's something we had to deal with. It's a foam crowbar, but the top of it totally broke off. Thanks, Maximilian. The latex glove stuff, all the stuff with the latex was pretty tough sometimes, as far as like the messing up takes and having to get that right. I'm trying to think of any other props that really... We didn't have a whole lot of props, really. I mean, we had, like, the fake guns, which I borrowed from some filmmaker friends of mine. Yeah, I mean, everything went according to plan very surprisingly. We were very lucky. Like, we did not have... With the exception of it raining on us after we shot the Lotso scene. That's the one, like, unexpected bad thing that happened. Everything else, and it didn't really matter because we'd already wrapped. Everything else went completely smoothly. Like, we didn't really have equipment failures, although I think Brett did, but nothing that really got in the way or stalled us in the film. We didn't have anybody, like, get sick or, like, not show up. I mean, everything was perfect. Like, everything went extremely smoothly. We were really lucky. I mean, if anything had gone wrong, God only knows we might not have a movie. Like, anything. So, yeah, we were very fortunate. What about Chris's expression when Tina tells him to go get coffee? Is that when he realizes that something is going on with Nines and Gavin? Yes. I like to believe that Chris has been oblivious the entire film because I think it adds contrast. Tina very obviously knows that something is going on. Even from her first scene with Nines by themselves, she's just like, "You spoiling our boy again? I see you." You know, she understands that there's something going on with them and she supports it. But Chris doesn't. He just doesn't see it. He just is completely blind to it. And then finally... I just love that, like, when Nines returns and Chris just looks at Gavin and he's just like, "Oh, wow, this motherfucker wrecked." That's when he notices, like, oh, I'm gonna leave. But I think even still, like, until he actually sees them kissing through the glass, that's really the moment where he's like, "Oh, okay. Wow, yeah, I am blind. I am the worst detective ever." So, yeah. And I love it. Thank you, everybody, for giving so much love to Michael Smallwood this weekend. He's a fantastic actor. He stars in Halloween Kills, which is coming up at the end of the year. Like, he's going places, and I absolutely adore him, and he's so talented and deserves all of your attention. So I know that Chris was kind of like a supporting character to Detroit Awakening, but I definitely wanted him to be more of a main character in this and somebody who has his own sort of like appreciation and fandom, and that has been delivered in droves. So yeah, Michael is feeling the love, and he's so appreciative of it. Did Gavin know that Nines put the jacket on him since he woke up, or was he awake all the time? Well, Chris was actually freaking asleep during that scene. Chris is a person who can fall asleep literally anywhere at any time. He just, it's a talent. But yeah, he was actually starting to really fall asleep during that scene. So I don't know, but I like to believe that Gavin probably didn't really know that much. I mean, obviously he had to wake up at some point and be like, what is this? Oh, Nines draped his jacket over me. We're probably just really good friends. Because Gavin obviously is not going to have a realization that Nines wants him. Although, he does say to Tina, he's like, he keeps trying to get closer and it doesn't make any sense. Gavin does realize after a point, particularly after the bedroom, that Nines is trying to get closer to him. He does realize that Nines maybe is interested in him. What he can't reconcile is why. And what he can't reconcile is the fact that he doesn't think that it's going to go anywhere good. That he thinks that he's just going to disappoint Nines, that, okay, yeah, well, maybe Nines wants me now, but he's going to get tired of me and he's going to leave. I think that's where Gavin is for the second half of the movie. Maybe for the first half doesn't have as much awareness that Nines actually has feelings for him. But he's not Chris Miller about it. Like, he does understand that, like, Nines has feelings for him. I think Nines is a little bit more oblivious that Gavin has feelings for him. I think he basically tells himself the whole movie that Gavin doesn't want to do anything with him, is not interested in him, doesn't want to advance their relationship in any way. Even though his Zen Garden Gavin, his internal Gavin, is kind of like, dude, he likes you. And Nines is like, maybe? Is that my subconscious? Are you my subconscious? Are you telling me something? But yeah, so I think that's kind of where they stand on, like, knowing each other's, feelings about things. Were there any scenes that were hard to film, like awkward people were messing around? Cali Catch 733. Yes. The scene where Ada and Nines are walking down the street talking came out really well in the film. Performances saved it. Like, the performances are fantastic, and that was what sells that scene. However, that's the most guerrilla, what we say, the most guerrilla shoot that we did, because we didn't actually have that location. We basically were near the bar and we're like, all right, let's just find a place where we can shoot this film around the corner. And we found this stretch of side street between the Bryce, whatever it's called, auditorium, the auditorium for College of Charleston, and some College of Charleston dorms. And it was a Tuesday night. I don't know why it was rowdy AF, but you could hear in the background these college students going buck wild and being loud as all get out. And I'm just like, so the sound was messed up. We went out there and it was the quietest street, and as soon as we started filming, all of a sudden a rave started. We're just like, really? So that was difficult. There were cars like every 5 minutes that, JJ was trying to like keep them at the end of the street from going down the alley, but nobody was listening to him. So every 5 minutes it was like car, and we had to like stop in the middle of a scene, pretend like we weren't shooting a movie. Like Brett would just casually like put his camera behind his back and just be like, I'm just an innocent person enjoying a walk down the street, not shooting a movie or nothing. And so like we had to deal with that, and we could only really be there for like 15 to 20 minutes because we did not want to get busted. So we only had like 3 takes of that whole scene, but it came together great. That was definitely the most difficult, like, or not the most difficult. I mean, the combat was the most difficult, but as far as the most like annoying scene to shoot, because there was just factors beyond our control that we couldn't really do anything about. I would say, other than that, getting through some of those group Jericho scenes was pretty difficult for me, because when you put 4 big personalities in the same room together, sometimes it gets a little bit hard to wrangle your actors together because they like to be loud. They like to be like make jokes and stuff and feed off each other's energy. So wrangling in some of those extroverts was a little bit difficult some days when we were shooting both of those visiting Jericho conference room scenes. All right, let's see. What else we got? I can probably take like one or two more because it is 2 o'clock. Somebody will be wrapping it up soon and saving the rest for Saturday. JJ, they thought you were a bum? What? Oh, that's funny. Since it was mentioned in the movie Between Nines and Ada, is your headcanon for this universe? Has Connor taken out his LED or left it in like Nines? Asked Hurricane Hannah. I tend to like the idea that Connor has kept it. But I can kind of go either way with it. I feel like he would keep it for a time, but would maybe get rid of it eventually, especially if he like gave it to somebody as like a gift of affection. I don't know. I don't know. I think that Connor at this point maybe he doesn't have it anymore, but he definitely like kept it for at least a while because Connor is a person who did exist like before the revolution and everything. Maybe has some sort of desire to be like more human, more so than like Nines does. Nines, with the exception of his arc where he's not sure if he can be a full partner to Gavin, is pretty happy with being an android. Like has no desire to become human, has no desire to install a digestive tract, has no desire to, have sex, has no desire to do any of that. Like he doesn't have any interest in like changing himself in any way, let's say. So yeah, I would say that's like, I don't know if Connor necessarily, I think Connor might feel a little bit like that, but doesn't feel it to the extremes that Nines does. What is Kynes and Connor's relationships as CLP? Are they good friends? Yeah, I like to believe that they're pretty good friends, good coworkers. I don't think they're like brothers, but I do think that they get along well, and Nines does go to Connor for advice sometimes. Yeah, and Hank and Connor chilling it. And why? Somebody asked me where's Sumo and who's taking care of Sumo right now, if Connor and Hank are in New York. And I think it's Ben Collins. I think Ben Collins is currently taking care of Sumo. And when Sumo goes home, he's going to be 20 pounds heavier from all the table scraps that Ben gives him because Ben absolutely spoils him. How did the Valerie and Hank scene came about, says That Geek Ellie. Well, I needed a transition in that scene. I wanted to address where Hank and Connor were. I felt like that was necessary. So I kind of... this chair. I kind of needed like something to spark the conversation about like Hank and Connor, and I wanted to give Valerie some dialogue, so it just kind of seemed natural. And also like I do think there's a sizable portion of the fandom that has the hots for Hank, and respect. Shout out to those people. So yeah, I think that's kind of a character that some people could project a little bit onto, which is a little bit fun. So that's kind of how that came about. Also, I kind of wanted to maybe establish that even though Tina, like me and Carla kind of agree that like Tina is 100% a lesbian, that maybe Valerie's bisexual, or maybe Valerie's pansexual, like maybe Valerie's actually like of a slightly different orientation. So that was kind of a little bit of the motivation as well. But that's in the eye of the beholder. That can be whatever you want to interpret it as. I see the postcard with Gavin. Yes, Lemon. There's your art. There's the original of Double right there, and then postcard up there, and then Book Trout's cards are there. Lito's stuff, Lito Perzito's stuff that he sent me. Warden Mages, I believe, drew that Chartreuse, which is really awesome. Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff up there, and it will continue to expand, I'm sure, as I get more stuff in the P.O. box. Courtney Olivia, hitting me right in the feels. Is there anything you wish you could have improved upon if you had had more time, could have added in? Always. A million things. I mean, like I said, I only finished this movie 9 hours before it came out, so there's definitely things in the movie as it is that are unfinished. There's always going to be those things, and I've tried to let them go. I think that in terms of like going back to the beginning of the production, when we talk about things that I could have done from the very beginning that I didn't get to do, there was a scene with Dr. Maria in Nines that I would have liked to have added at the beginning of the movie between the DPD scene and the stakeout, where he goes to Dr. Maria for maintenance, and that's like your introduction to that character as his kind of like mom figure. And he talks to her about, hey, I'm having some like, software instability and that sort of thing, and she basically kind of realizes that he has feelings for Nines, that what he's feeling is love, or feelings for Gavin, and that what he's feeling is love. And so that could have been a cool little scene, especially like to give you more of Dr. Maria in the film. So that would have been really cool, but unfortunately we only had Maryland for 6 hours, and we only had that location for 10 hours. So we just did not have time to insert another scene at CyberLife. It was a very expensive location, and we only had 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and otherwise they were a nursing school, so they only operated normal business hours. The other thing that I would have liked to added, I mean, honestly, like I would have loved to have about 100-minute movie where we spend 30 more minutes on the case, on interviewing the Jericho suspects, and having red herrings, on maybe having more of an arc with Lotso, or that kind of stuff would have been really, really fun to have if we had the ability to make a longer movie and flesh out the detective part a little bit more. That could have been cool, but it is what it is. I mean, we had the money we had, and we had the time we had, and we made the most of it, I think, with what resources that we had. So even though there's always, things that I would have wanted to include, be it, a more complicated fight scene, be it more side character stuff, be it more, fleshed out, whatever, you got to make peace with what you can make, even if it's not necessarily all of your ideas. Oh, could I make that scene a one-shot, says Carlotta. It's not a horrible idea, actually, making like, like a couple like little deleted scenes. Dr. Maria lives here in Charleston, so she wouldn't be easy to get access to. Maximilian is within driving distance, so I could maybe go back, and I have a good relationship with that location still. It'd be a little expensive to go back there. Or maybe I could find like a location that I don't actually need the hospital beds and stuff. I could maybe find another location and pretend it's CyberLife, and not have to pay $1,100 for it. But yeah, like I could maybe do something like that. Maybe show like a prequel like scene, from DE where Nines visits Dr. Maria. I also thought about maybe doing like a little Lotso side story where it's just JJ. Doing stuff. We could shoot something really short, like over a weekend or something, where it's either his home life or, his conversation with the dealer before he leaves. Just like little one-shot, like deleted scenes from the story, like could be kind of fun. But they'd mostly have to use our local regional actors and not any of our New York actors, because it'd just be too expensive to bring them down for that unless we shot them all back to back or something. Am I going to do gaming streams? Yes, that's an awesome question. We are doing gaming streams. You can visit Chris and Maximilian's streams at Trindabago and Maximilian Koger. They stream together on Sundays. Right now they're doing Resident Evil 6, but they're going to do a lot of other like Play Pals co-op games and stuff in the coming weeks. And then they individually stream on Saturday or on Fridays and Thursdays. They do Detroit Become Human and Uncharted 4. And then I stream, I actually want to talk about this. On Thursdays at 8 p.m. for the rest of the summer, I'm going to be doing the Nonary Games trilogy. I'm finishing up the finale of the first Nonary game, 999, this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. But then starting in 2 weeks from now, I will be playing the second Zero game, which I don't know the name of. I've lost it off the top of my head. I'm sure somebody in the chat knows it. I'm going to be doing the sequel, and then after that I'll be doing Zero Time Dilemma, which is the third one. So we got nonary games for days. I love this series, and if you want to get caught up on that, it's all on YouTube. All of our previous episodes on that. Definitely get caught up on those line. They're super fun. And then on Mondays, I'm introducing a new gaming stream for myself where I play more mainstream AAA and Quantic Dream titles. Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm either going to be starting with some modded DBH or I'm going to be starting with Heavy Rain. So I haven't decided yet. I have to see if I can get my hands on the mods in the first place and see about that. But I'll be either experimenting with modded DBH or we'll be starting a PC remastered Heavy Rain playthrough. It won't be a blind playthrough. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I'm very familiar with it, but I think it'll be a lot of fun to revisit that with you guys, especially for those of you who haven't seen the game before. It's definitely worth playing. So starting in a couple weeks, we'll be doing more nonary games on Thursdays, and we'll be doing some Quantic Dream stuff on Mondays. So if you want to see me game, check me out for those, because we are on the way to Twitch Partner, and we're trying to get to an average of 75 viewers and 12 streams in 30 days in order to hit that mark. All right, I think that's about it. I'll take one more. Luke Lemon asked a really awesome question. Is there anything I regret cutting? I'll get to that in a sec. But before I get to that final question, I just want to say thank you guys for turning up for this Director Q&A and Octopunk Weekly update. We do the Octopunk Weekly update every Tuesday at noon. I will not be doing any streams next week, taking the week off, but for the rest of this week, this Thursday, you can join us for the finale of the nonary games. And on Saturday, be sure to join us for... let's get the schedule up for our Detroit Evolution cast Q&A at noon on Saturday Eastern, same time as this started today. So that will be a lot of fun. Be sure to get some questions ready for our 5 cast members. There's a lot of questions that were asked of me today that I think would be better in their hands, so be sure to save those and ask them then. And then finally, I'll get back to Luke Lemon's last question. Was there anything I regret cutting? So... no, there isn't. I edited it for so long. I was very studious about the things that I cut. Everything that I cut for good reason. However, I will tell you, I did go through a process where I did delete a scene in the film, and then I retroactively added it back because I did regret having cut it. And pretty much that scene was the morning after scene. There were elements to that scene when I initially went through the footage that I felt like didn't vibe right. I felt like the scene was too angry. I felt like the scene was kind of hostile in a way that I didn't want Read 900 to feel. And so what I ended up doing was I had the scene in the bedroom. It ends with them hand-holding interfacing, and then it immediately cuts to Jericho the next day, and they're tense and angry with each other. And it kind of it reads weird because you're kind of like, okay, well, they just bonded and now they're angry at each other. What's happening? And what I did was I inserted like digitized memories of Nines, like flashback memories, all throughout the scene of little bits and pieces from the morning after in the bedroom. The bits that I felt like were usable from the scene instead of the bits that I felt like were weaker. And so it allowed me to keep the parts of that scene that I needed to tell the story, but sloughed the parts of that scene that I felt like didn't work cinematically. So we did that at first, and I felt really happy with it. I was like, oh, I'm a genius. I've cracked the case. And then I watched the rough cut and was like, oh, this feels very strange. This doesn't work at all. And so I revisited that scene, and I cut it. And I was still, the thing that was hanging me up the most was that when Chris yelled, "Get out," he like... It was really, really drawn out and harsh. Like, get out! Like, it was in your face. And I was just like, that's still too hostile. Like, I just, it's too mean. I don't want it to be mean. But what I ended up doing was I cut like a half second out of out and made it more snappy, made it get out. And that fixed it. And that was able to convey the intensity and the anxiety of that line while removing some of the hostility and some of the cruelty of it. So once I did that, I was happy with it, and I restored that entire scene to the film. And I think it definitely works, and I can't imagine the film without it now. So I would say that's my moment of having regretted having cut something, but I always make sure to be happy with things by the time I actually finish them, and I was able to actually add that back. And yes, Simona, there actually, it was more intense, to the point where I was talking about this in the Discord, and like, trigger warning for panic attacks and stuff. If you don't want to hear about this, mute me for the next like minute or so. We shot him having a panic attack at the end of that scene. We only shot it once, because I only was like, I'm only going to make you do this one time. This is Chris's idea. He felt like it was right for the character. He felt like this is something that this would happen to this character at the end of the scene. And we shot it, and it was very intense. It was very upsetting. It was fine from a filmmaking standpoint. Like, he was fine. He de-escalated quickly. Like, it was very safe and everything. But in the footage, like, it was very raw and it was very intense. And I was just like, that's just not right for this type of movie. And I feel like it's gratuitous for this scene. So that was like another thing I had to kind of grapple with that scene, is like, okay, I've got this footage now. What do I do with it? And as far as like deleted things from the movie and bits of footage, you know, I'm happy to share like deleted scenes. I'm happy to share unused footage of the cute stuff. You will probably never see that footage because it's just too raw. It's very personal. And I just don't think that there's anybody that really would benefit from necessarily seeing that footage. So that's something that ended up on the cutting room floor. It actually took me 2 months to even watch that footage because I really had to mentally prepare myself for it. But yeah, so understandable, right? So yeah, that was another reason that scene was challenging for me, was because I had to, I knew that was in the footage, and I was like, oh God, like, I don't even want to like think about like what I'm going to do with that. And once I like mentally detached myself from that and was like, okay, I know I'm not going to use that. So like, let's look at the rest of the scene and figure out what we're going to do with it. It became much easier, and I was able to envision it. The interesting thing about editing is like, you really have to bury yourself in the project for months and months and months before you can start sort of seeing the possibilities of it, before you can start seeing things like, what if I copied and pasted this kiss from different angles and made a third kiss? What if I, cut out a little bit of dialogue here and changed the meaning of like that inflection? What if I, inserted flashbacks of one of these scenes? And actually, I'll mention this too. Some of the movie was edited out of order from how it was shot and how it was scripted. The scene with Gavin and Tina was actually meant to be right before they met Dr. Maria. They have that scene where they have the heart-to-heart about like, in the hospital lobby about Nines and their relationship. And then Dr. Maria shows up and explains all that exposition about Ada. And then after the confrontation with Ada in the Zen garden, Gavin is immediately by Nine's side in the coma. And I felt like Gavin and Tina's heart-to-heart got kind of lost in all the exposition and all the conflict and stuff that happens on either side of it. So I ended up going directly from the coma, the attack, to the Dr. Maria stuff, explain Ada's origins, then we get back to Gavin and Tina, and it goes into the coma scene, and it works way better. And it was February before I realized that that's where that scene needed to be. So, yeah, it's interesting to give yourself, you got to give yourself time, and it's not a matter of like hours of labor. It's not a matter of, it really is just physical time, months and months of spending time thinking about the footage and trying to imagine how it could be and getting ideas about it, especially when you're also the screenwriter, because when you're the screenwriter, you have this version of the film that you are married to in your mind. Like, this is how I wrote it, so this is how I imagine it. And you gotta be so familiar with the footage that that's what you see now, and you don't think about the script anymore. You don't think about what you originally wanted it to be. You can only think about what you have in front of you and what it could be. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with that. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. Thank you guys so much for showing up and supporting, and all of your love that you've given to the film this entire weekend. We crossed 100,000 views yesterday in the first 3 days, which is wild. I don't even know what it is right now. I haven't checked YouTube right now. I haven't checked YouTube today. God only knows what it's up to now, but we were the #1 trending topic on Tumblr, like all of Tumblr, which is just absurd. We were number 15th in fandoms on Tumblr, up there with StarKid and Markiplier and Jacksepticeye, which is crazy to be in that company. And we were the #1 trending topic on Twitter in Russia, like the whole country, which is also just mind-blowing. I hope Putin is happy that our big gay movie inspired his citizens. I hope that doesn't put a target on my back or something. But yeah, I'm very grateful for the response that it has had. I never expected to have statistics like that, or to have such an outpouring of support, to have people come and say, oh, I've never even played DBH, I don't even know what this is, but I still watched this movie anyway, and I loved it. That's what we want. We want to be able to reach people outside the fandom, because ace representation matters. Queer sci-fi matters. Being able to show an LGBT romance that is earnest and in your face, but also in a genre film, like a thriller or like a sci-fi, is really important to me, and really awesome, especially when you're actually having like gay actors represent themselves in their films and stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. I can't wait to see you on Saturday for our Detroit Evolution cast and crew stream, or cast stream rather. Get your questions ready now to bring to that stream on Saturday. And as always, stay great, hydrate, and have a happy time set.